Never take the bus alone, it could save your life. A 17-year-old boy was on his way home from the gym and decided to take the bus. The boy unfortunately missed the first bus, so he had to wait for the second one, and it was getting pretty late. The boy was just hanging out in that little bus shelter until a man with thick clothing started walking awkwardly towards him. The boy felt pretty creeped out, but decided to just focus on his phone and hope he would walk away. But then the man took a seat right next to the boy and reached his arm out to grab him. The boy grabbed his backpack and ran as fast as he could to the next stop. He thought he was safe until he saw that same man's face pressed up against the window of the bus shelter. The deranged man lunged at him again but missed and fell to the floor. There was blood pouring out of his face and the boy called 911. The cops explained to the boy that the man was on prescription drugs. And upon looking through the man's wallet, they found a picture of the man's son which looked just like the boy.
If you're alone right now, don't watch this video. In the winter of 2018, a man who was living alone in the mountains wakes up to find a red ball sitting on his front yard. He assumed the only neighbor he had must have kids, and so he kicks the ball over the fence, goes inside, doesn't think anything of it. That night, he wakes up to the sound of kids laughing outside of his window. He goes outside to check on them because it's the middle of the night, and there's no kids anywhere, but that red ball is back on his property. So he picks it up, brings it in his house, and goes back to bed. The next morning, he goes over to his neighbor's house to let them know that their kids were out in his yard in the middle of the night. But it turns out his neighbor is just some old man who lives alone, and there aren't any kids anywhere in the area. That night, he wakes up again to the sound of kids on his property, and when he looks outside, there's no kids, but that red ball is back on his property. Panicked, he runs downstairs to make sure the one he brought in is still inside, and it's gone. He checked every window and door, and everything was still locked. It didn't make any sense. He decides to look out the window one more time, and off in the distance is some weird, stiff figure watching him.
This is one of the world's most haunted dolls, Okiku. Said to be so haunted that if you even glance at this doll, you could become cursed. Now, the story surrounding this doll is actually terrifying. Back in the 1918s, Okiku was purchased in Japan for a man's younger sister. Tragically, after a year of owning this doll, the little girl passed away from the flu. The family then decided to create a shrine for her, placing the large doll inside of it as a display. Now, originally, this doll had a short bob-cut haircut, and only a few weeks after being placed inside of the shrine, the doll's hair grew, way past her shoulders. And in the 1930s, the family moved away. The doll was then given to a museum, where her hair continues to grow to this day. Up next is a doll named Lily. It was made in the 1980s with real human hair. After seeing a Facebook post, Zach Bagans decided that he wanted to try out this doll and see what it was all about. Terrifying thing is the last person that did this had massive nightmares and ended up getting into a tragic accident. It's also said that this doll talks, not in a normal sweet doll voice, in a very deep and demonic tone. Now this doll Lily currently resides at the Zach Bagan Museum, which is probably a good thing because most people probably shouldn't be around this doll, due to the fact that it's made with human hair. It's caused mass tragedies, on top of it being so haunted that it can literally manipulate your nightmares. I'm good on all the dolls.
This is why you should always keep your phone charged. A girl named Marissa came home from school at around 3 p.m. She walked in the door and told her mom that some random number kept calling her all day. Her mom told her the person may have the wrong number and just to ignore it. Marissa said okay and begins to do her homework. A couple hours later, she receives a phone call from the same number. Marissa answers it this time and says, "Hello?" The man then says, "We finally found you. Don't worry, bunny." Marissa begins to panic and tells her mom what just happened. Her mom's face goes blank and says, "What did the man just call you?" Marissa says, "He called me bunny." Her mom yells and says, "Grab your stuff. We need to leave." Marissa, confused, packs her things and gets into the red car. Her mom begins driving fast and turns on the radio. The radio says, "The baby named Marissa who was kidnapped in the hospital 10 years ago has been found and police are searching for a red car." Marissa looks at the woman and says, "Who are you?" The woman looks back and says, "You can call me mommy."
Crazy history you were not taught in school. Deep within the earth lies the remains of a planet that crashed into us billions of years ago. Muammar Gaddafi submitted a proposal to the UN suggesting that Switzerland be merged into Germany, Italy, and France. A shipwreck from 1773 was found just 7 feet under the World Trade Center's foundation during the cleanup aftermath of 9/11. Genghis Khan caused so much devastation that the vegetation regrowth from the lands he conquered led to a notable decrease in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This man ran a mile in under 4 minutes during a time where it was believed if you did that, your heart would explode. But now today, thousands of people have done it. George Washington's favorite food was hoe cakes, which was a type of pancake that was made out of cornbread. Alexander the Great conquered the known world, but never attempted to attack Sparta. Actual knights fought in World War I. Napoleon never exhibited any signs of PTSD despite being engaged in warfare for over 2 decades.
With today being St. Patrick's Day, here's 3 ways to survive the Leprechaun from the Leprechaun movies. Number 1, don't go anywhere near his gold. It sounds easy, I know, but my boy is obsessed with gold, and he'll do absolutely anything to get it, including unaliving you. So if for some reason you see a massive pot of gold on the side of the road, just keep driving. Don't even look at it for too long, because if he assumes that you're going to try and steal his gold, you're cooked. Number 2, if you see a rainbow, do not follow it, because what's at the end of a rainbow? A massive pot of gold. And who's also following that rainbow trying to get that massive bag, that massive pot of gold? The Leprechaun. So if you follow that rainbow, you're gonna run directly into him. Yeah, he's small, but he also has magical powers. And as I said before, we'll do absolutely anything to get his gold. And number 3, for some reason you don't listen to any of my other rules, just listen to this. If you have a 4-leaf clover, it will completely take over his body and not allow him to then use his magical power. That is the only thing that can save you from the Leprechaun. Yes, he's small, and probably pretty slow because his legs are small. But if you don't have a 4-leaf clover, his magical powers can hit you if you're running. So the only way to really defeat the Leprechaun is by having a 4-leaf clover. But to be honest, I don't know why you would go out of your way to even outsource the Leprechaun and try to go one-on-one against him anyway. Like and follow for more.
Morbid Facts, Part 471. A 71-year-old man from Africa has lived in total isolation for 55 years to stay away from women. At the age of 16, he locked himself into a home secured by a 15-foot fence to avoid any possible interactions with females. He reportedly suffers from gynophobia, an irrational fear of women. A 26-year-old mum from the UK has died after traveling to Turkey for a Brazilian butt lift. The official cause of death was a fat embolism after some of the injected fat apparently entered her bloodstream. Many health professionals consider BBLs to be barbaric procedures because of the significant health risks associated with them that are seldom discussed. In July of 1518, a French woman ran from her house and started dancing fervently in the street. Within a week, a few dozen others had joined her, and by the next month, hundreds fell victim to this dancing plague. They danced completely uncontrollably and seemingly without reason, often for days on end, until they collapsed from exhaustion or even died from heart attacks or strokes. Up to 400 people in total died before the phenomenon suddenly stopped. It's widely believed that the dancing plague was caused by stress-induced hysteria or poisoning from a wheat fungus called ergot.
The longest things in the world. Longest English word. Pneumona ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. Longest YouTube video, 596 hours. Longest song, Rise and Fall of Bossa Nova, 13 hours long. Longest film, Logistics, over 35 days long. Longest day of 2021, Monday the 21st of June.
If you're ever attacked by a chimpanzee, here's what you need to do to survive. Rule number 1, remember that you're probably gonna die. You see, chimps share around 98% of human DNA, meaning that they're very smart, but also more aggressive. They're like humans, but with less empathy, and we barely have any to begin with. Chimps are reportedly 2 to 4 times stronger than humans and look like you would if you had stuck to your New Year's resolution. And now for some actual advice. Rule number 1, do not punch them. Chimps are so aggressive that they love to attack and tear off human faces, hands, and genitals. So unless you want to get your hands torn off like Captain Hook, try throwing an object or kicking if you can. But that probably won't work anyway, and your best bet is swimming away. Chimps have super low body fat, so they're pretty bad at swimming. So you better Michael Phelps your way out of there, and if you can't find a nearby river, make sure you tell Iron Man that I say hi.
This teenager poisoned her rival's show goat because she didn't like cheaters. 17-year-old Aubrey Van Landingham is a senior at Vista Ridge High School in Cedar Park, Texas. She was a cheerleader who often competed in livestock with her ag program at school. The school had a barn on campus where they could keep their animals. On October 23rd of 2024, Aubrey was caught on security footage using a trench gun to force-feed a 6-month-old goat named Willie. She was forcing Willie to consume a toxic pesticide. Willie tried to escape but was trapped and had no other choice but to drink it. Aubrey left and came back to check on Willie twice within 2 hours to make sure that he was dead. She then called Willie's owner's mom to let her know that Willie wasn't feeling well. Willie died less than a day later in his owner's arms and suffered by having convulsions and respiratory distress. Aubrey told police that she did this because she believed that Willie and his 15-year-old owner were cheaters. This wasn't the first time that Aubrey had done something to Willie. She had tried once before but had failed. Police investigated Aubrey's phone and they saw that she was searching lethal doses of bleach for animals and how to clear search history. The 15-year-old's mother claimed that Aubrey probably did this because she was jealous of her competitor, not because any cheating was involved. On November 22nd, Aubrey was arrested and charged with cruelty to livestock animals and was released the same day on a $5,000 bond. If Aubrey is convicted, she could face up to 2 years in prison.
crazy things happening in the world right now. Chick-fil-A is the #1 preferred first date spot for American men according to a new survey. The top 5 spots are all actually fast food. The same survey said that 66% of women would prefer having a first date at a McDonald's. Doctors are now warning to not sit on the toilet for longer than 10 minutes. 5 of the top firms in the Plastic Pollution Alliance made 1,000 times more plastic than they cleaned up. A new AI tool was built to sound like an elderly grandmother to waste the time of phone scammers. Salesforce is hiring 1,000 salespeople to sell AI tools that replace salespeople. The first known emperor penguin to reach Australia was found on a beach. A woman married a man who had forgotten they had broken up after he had gotten a concussion. Yale is now teaching a class on Beyonce's political and cultural impact. A sick man was brought to a bank on his hospital bed to confirm his identity. 2 drug dealers are in jail for 12 years after losing their bag of drugs on a train and then reporting it missing.
Let's talk about this picture. Now, the picture was captured by Daniel Hill, who was the custodian at Driftville Elementary. If you look to the back of the photo, you can already kind of spot that something is very off. What the custodian had thought was maybe a student who had stayed after school and was trying to prank him in the dark turned out to be something much worse. Daniel Hill was attacked in that hallway and did not survive the attack, with his body being found the following morning by a student. He was described to be found on the floor with lacerations so severe he no longer had eyes and his nose was missing. So police eventually turned back to the final photo that was taken on his phone to try to enhance it to figure out who would have done this. This was about the clearest version that they could make of that photo, and the man seen here was never found and his motive towards Daniel was never known.
The brutal attack of Travis the chimp.
The chimp killed my friend! And the police up! With a gun! Please, hurry up! He's killing my girlfriend!
Who's killing your friend?
My chimpanzee!
Oh, your chimpanzee is killing your friend.
Yes. She's dead, he ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything. Shoot him! Shoot him!
Travis was a 200-pound male chimpanzee that appeared in many movies and TV shows. But on February 16th, 2009, Travis finally snapped. The woman that you heard on the phone was Sandra Harold, the chimp's owner, and the woman being attacked was Charla Nash, one of Sandra's friends. Sandra tried to save her friend by bashing the chimp with a shovel and stabbing him in the back with a butcher knife, but that only made him more angry. Travis ripped off Charla's eyelids and tore off her nose. The chimp then scalped her, gouged out, and ate her eyeballs before chewing off her hand. Shortly after, the police showed up and executed Travis by gunfire.
You remember that time a man-eating camel terrorized a town in Arizona? Crazy, right? It was a villain that encouraged a cowardly dog, and it started with the government. You see, they realized the hump jockey's a way better desert option than horses, and when the US was trying to make like Bianca Censori and head west, well, that started the Camel Corps, where America thought it was a good idea to weaponize the dromedary variety. It got abandoned, and the camels were auctioned off. Some ended up in zoos, and some were straight up roughing it in the American Southwest. The story goes, one day in 1883, a mysterious beast murked the rancher's wife, and eyewitness described it as a giant, tall, red-looking beast with a demon riding shotgun. Speaking of shotgun, after several sightings and one incident where it nearly erased a cowboy that had lassoed it, they decided it was time to bear arms before things got grisly. 5 men took a shot and none of them hit, but by the pure power of plot armor, one of them managed to knock something off. But when they went to investigate, it was a skull, a fresh human skull that still had some hair on it. For the next several years, there were stories of this homicidal red quadruped ubering a headless demon attacking people, which actually is a Courage episode now that I think about it. The story spread until one day farmer Mizzou Hastings looked outside and saw the steed of Satan eating out of his yard. He one-shot it and realized not only was this mysterious beast one of the leftover camels from the failed Camel Corps, there was a life-deprived former human strapped to the camel, so tight that it actually scarred the body. To this day, we have no clue how that man past tense what he was doing to get stuck there, or how long the camel was carrying a decapitated, decomposing was on its back, but some say it could have been up to a decade. The more you know, ain't you glad you asked?
These are scary urban legends in each state, part 4. Up first is Lamala Aura. Lamala Aura is located in New Mexico and is a very scary and dangerous demonic spirit. She walks around lonely roads after midnight and terrorizes those who travel alone. People who have seen her say she appears as a large black lump, constantly moving and changing shape. But the scariest part about Lamala Aura is that anyone who lays eyes on her will be driven completely insane She tries to hypnotize and paralyze anyone who encounters her. Some people even believe the devil himself is scared of Lamala Aura. People who live in New Mexico also say that she really never appears in human form. But if she does, it means somebody you know or yourself is going to die soon. So if you live in New Mexico, I feel bad for you.
Morbid Facts, Part 441. While working in his garage in 2012, Chicago man Dante Autolo accidentally shot a 3-inch nail directly into his skull. But he had no idea the nail had entered his brain until he started feeling nauseous 36 hours later, and a dozen doctors were completely stunned when they saw his x-rays. The nail was surgically removed and Dante miraculously made a full recovery. After his meth-addicted wife spread a false rumor that he was a pedophile, Australian father Bradley Lyons was kidnapped and attacked by a vigilante group of pedophile hunters. He was tortured with lighters and knuckle dusters and threatened with a shotgun in his mouth for not confessing to his crimes. At some point, the group poured hot water over Bradley's head and cut off his hand with a chainsaw since he continued to deny the false allegations. They then left him in the trunk of a hot car for 21 hours before executing him in the woods. Several people were sentenced to years in prison for the horrific murder, including Bradley's wife.
What did Diddy just do now? It's really not looking good for him, is it? Mr. Diddler, we all know him. He was in the headlines massively a few months ago when all of the stuff was breaking out. We had all the logs leaked of the alleged celebrities that were attending these parties, along with many other things happening. Now though, you probably know this guy, Luigi Mangione, who has been a massive talking point for the last few weeks. I'm sure everybody knows what he did, and there's been a lot of devise on social media, so a lot of people supporting him, a lot of people not supporting him, obviously. But Diddy is not happy, you see. He's really not happy. He said, and I quote, "It's not fair I'm getting so much hate while in the lockup, while Luigi is getting a load of love and praise." I'm sorry? Essentially, he said that he is innocent, there's a lot of people that know he's innocent, so why isn't he getting a load of love and attention while inside? But it gets crazy, he said he is literally raging at this, so he's really not happy. As far as actually throwing temper tantrums in the jail because he's getting a lot of attention. I don't even know what to say, to be honest, but yeah. Know your thoughts, and as always, I'll keep you updated.
The oldest country is not Egypt, it's Iran.
Hello, my friend. I wouldn't say Iran is the oldest country in the world, but that itself is quite a strange claim to make. What do we mean when we say the oldest country? Is it when the modern concept of a nation-state was established? Is it the length in time a political identity has held power over a region? Or is it simply how long a region has maintained a certain name? The oldest country is usually determined based on one of these interpretations. For example, some argue that Egypt, with its ancient civilizations dating back over 5,000 years, is the oldest. However, this is based on the continuity of the region's historical identity rather than its modern statehood. Others point to China, citing the unbroken lineage of dynasties and cultural continuity. Yet again, this reflects a cultural or civilizational perspective rather than a political one. When it comes to the idea of modern nation-states, countries like France and England, which established centralized governments and national identities in the medieval period, often enter the discussion. As for Iran, its claim stems from the Achaemenid Empire founded by Cyrus the Great in 550 BC, I think. The region's cultural and political identity has remained remarkably consistent over those many centuries, surviving invasions, dynastic changes, and modern shifts. But the truth is, defining the oldest country depends entirely on how we interpret history. Is it the continuity of culture, the endurance of a name, or the longevity of a political system? Each perspective brings its own answer to the question.
Clip circulating on social media, I just couldn't believe it. Here you have a man who's now known to be one of the most prolific sexual predators in Hollywood, discussing what seems to be a how-to guide on how to groom a child on national television. I know that people are going to say, oh, it was a different time and blah, 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 this was more acceptable. But I don't think that this ever should have been acceptable. I mean, I can't remember a single television show that I watched that had any sort of content that reflected a value like the one that's being presented here in this clip. Especially coming from the mouth of a guy like Bill Cosby. It's kind of like Jeffrey Epstein giving you dating advice. But I'm just going to play the rest of the clip for you now. This is just really disturbing.
A hero nun who risks her own life saving orphan children from being exploited. Final Vow is one of those movies that is going to leave you at the edge of your seat. Sister Anne Marie works at an orphanage in Mexico, and one day out of the blue, a 15-year-old girl gets adopted. She immediately becomes suspicious, and she is convinced that the couple that adopted the young girl is going to do something sinister. Her suspicions are correct, and she will stop at nothing to make sure that that young girl is saved along with many others. Final Vow shows the scary reality of what is going on in this world and how easily vulnerable children can be sold and exploited. On the film's website, there is an AI feature, and you can chat with the cast to answer any kind of questions you may have and learn more about the film. If you're like me and always has a bunch of unanswered questions, then this feature is going to be really fun for you. Make sure to check out Final Vow on https://finalvow.com, and once you watch it, comment down below and let me know what you think.